Troglodyte warning. Today I'm going to react to Konstantin Kisin's video, Breaking News, Southport Stabbings are the nice fault. So let's get straight into the video.
Breaking news, Southport stabbings caused by knife. Axel Rudakubana's murder of 3 children and wounding of others at a Taylor Swift dance class shocked the nation last summer and served as the spark which ignited the riots.
No, it was actually lies and fabrications that sparked the riots. Misinformation spread by the likes of Andrew Tate, Tommy Robinson, Katie Hopkins, signal boosted by figures like Nigel Farage, who said that this guy, this killer, was a 22-year-old Syrian refugee who came over on a small boat the year before on the MI5 watch list, and this turned out not to be true at all. And they knew what they were doing because they were trying to stoke up hate based on the assumption that this guy was a illegal immigrant. Not true. It turns out he was actually born in the UK, but this doesn't fit their narrative, so already he's given us misinformation here.
It is therefore with great relief that I can report that the government and their media lackeys have finally worked out what the problem is. Is it the fact that he was referred to PREVENT, the government program designed to identify and de-radicalize potential terrorists, on 3 separate occasions?
Yes, you've just literally shown the journalism and report that outlines this information from the investigation. So yes, it is. What? Okay, if you're going to lie, don't give the evidence that they actually are talking about this stuff, yeah?
Is it the fact that the police had visited the family home numerous times in the months leading up to the attack? Is it the fact...
Yes, the information that you are being given by journalists here, based on the investigation of the last 6 months or so. So don't act like it's a... They're acting like now it's a cover-up. Like, you wouldn't know this information if it was a cover-up. That's what a cover-up is. The information. No, we have been drip-fed information. We know a lot of information. These investigations, very serious investigations, do take time. And also, with the underfunded court system, it takes a little bit longer. So acting like we don't know this, yes, you are given this information by the journalists.
Fact that up to 40,000 potential Islamic terrorists are on a government watch list? These are all reasonable questions, of course, which is precisely why they're not being asked.
Well, they are. You just shown evidence that they are clearly being asked.
Instead, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper today explained that it was a total disgrace that the murderer was easily able to order a knife on Amazon despite having a previous conviction for violence and being just 17.
Well, that's not the only thing she said. Again, a straw man. That's a bad thing that happened. The fact that he was able to buy a machete when he was 17. It's pretty bad. It's not the only thing. It's not the only explanation. But it is pretty bad.
The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, described Rudakubana as the 2-click killer. The result? Cooper has promised to bring in stronger measures to tackle knife sales online in the Crime and Policing Bill this spring.
Obviously, that's not enough. That doesn't actually tackle the underlying problems, the radicalization, the mental health, the problems that cause these events.
Rejoice, citizens of Great Britain. Your safety is now assured. And if, for some reason, you're not satisfied by this approach, help is available. Radio presenter James O'Brien, the undisputed leader of Britain's moron industrial complex, whose job it is to tell normies what to believe in order to avoid the cognitive dissonance of having to face reality,
He's projecting a little bit here, isn't he?
is on hand to help. He begins reasonably enough by pointing out that the killer bought his knife on Amazon. Why is this significant? After all, Rudakubana could have simply taken a knife from his parents' kitchen, or waited a week for his 18th birthday and bought a knife from any shop in the country.
I agree. I think the knife is kind of missing the point completely. Yes, it's bad, but also it does really kind of obfuscate the serious underlying issues that cause radicalization.
It's significant, O'Brien explains, because
Amazon, of course, is owned by Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos was sitting in the row behind Donald Trump at the latter's inauguration.
ooh, how quickly the plot thickens. O'Brien continues his stunning bout of investigative journalism by exclusively revealing that one of the thousands of videos Rudakubana watched before committing his crimes was published on X, which, as you all know, is owned by Elon Musk, who not only got on stage at the inauguration, but did the Nazi salutes, according to James O'Brien.
The man who owns the platform that still hosts and holds the footage that the Southport killer looked before he set off to that Taylor Swift dance class. He was not just sitting in the row directly behind Donald Trump. He is the guy that got on stage and did the Nazi salute.
Musk, of course,
I think that there's a serious conversation to have there. We know there is a deep causation between radicalization, Islamist, far right, and social media. A lot of young men are kind of led into the pipeline of the far right, of neo-Nazis through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And since Elon Musk bought Twitter a couple of years ago, there's been a massive move to the far right. He reinstated neo-Nazis like Nick Fuentes and Andrew Anglin. He signal boosted these Nazis. He shares a lot of this Nazi propaganda. He supported the AfD in Germany, and he is arguably one of the most powerful men in terms of radicalization. And now is Mark Zuckerberg is too. He's going to get rid of fact-checking, which is going to undermine and kind of any truth and just create a proliferation of misinformation, lies, and this will favor the far right.
did no such thing, but was instead misrepresented by people like James O'Brien in a way that they would never do with politicians whose views they like and support. O'Brien concluded,
Again, you've got to realize the context of what I just explained, that Elon Musk didn't just do the Zeke aisle, he also supports Nazis. So you kind of need to put them together. Yes, you can show photographs and one video of other people doing that sign, but what are their beliefs? You have to also look at what they believe and what they talk about.
concludes by stating that he is not given to hyperbole before suggesting that Bezos and Musk, two men who had nothing whatsoever to do with the Southport stabbings, are in fact the people we should be focusing on.
The aligning of these planets is at the very least notable. But what the hell can a British government do to rein them in? Because that is the fight that they've picked.
If you are somehow shocked by these developments, I envy you. Those of us who comment on these issues regularly are beginning to see a pattern.
No, you're implying a pattern where you exaggerate and demonize immigrants because it fits your narrative. The fact that this is a bigger problem than you would like to believe. Well, yeah, terrorism is a problem, but we are pretty insulated from the UK from terrorism. I think since the 70s, we've had about 3,600 deaths of terrorism, and the height was during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Since then, it happens very little, and that's not to downplay what has happened, but we need to get it into proportion and be proportionate about the real threat in the UK. We're very lucky. There's so many countries in the Middle East, Africa, and actually America is a hotbed of far-right terrorism, mainly because they have guns and there's literally shootings every day. So we need to be proportionate about the threat, because he's trying to insinuate that all these immigrants are criminals and this is happening every day. No, there's crime, there's terrorism, but we need to be accurate in how we represent it.
2021, Sir David Ames, the Member of Parliament for Southend West, was stabbed to death by Ali Harbi Ali, a British citizen of Somali descent with Islamist links. What was the response of David's colleagues? To bang on about online hate as if their friend had been killed by a tweet.
But that's how it begins. A lot of the people who are radicalized, it begins online, and it starts with words. It starts with propaganda and ideas and enemies that should be victims. So the idea that we can't talk about how social media plays into it is dangerous, because it's a big component, a massive component of radicalization.
Sad reality is that we live in a society that is absolutely determined to avoid unpleasant truths in the false belief that if we bury our heads in the sand, our problems will go away.
No, we need to talk about terrorism. We need to talk about all problems. We need to talk about it in an objective way, not a sensationalist and like act like, oh, this is the biggest threat facing humanity. It's a threat, but heart disease, strokes kill way more people, car crashes. We need to be proportionate and not be hyperbolic about like this is happening every day in the UK. It's a very extraordinary event, and we can't let people like this guy jump on it and demonize, because that's what he does. He doesn't care about the victims. He just wants to use this to smear immigrants and say, look, this is what they're like. He's trying to do this guilt by association, and it's working because a lot of people, a lot of Muslims, a lot of immigrants are fearful, and hate crime towards Muslims over the last few years has gone up. So we need to be really sensible of how we talk about this, because he's using it as a means to demonize immigrants. We need to have a sensible discussion.
They won't. Contrary to popular myth, even ostriches do not actually bury their heads in the sand, because it's stupid and it doesn't work. But that won't stop the government from trying, and idiots like O'Brien from egging them on.
Again, that's a straw man. I don't think they're maybe doing enough, and it needs funding. The Prevent initiative needs more funding. There was a review early last year that kind of give recommendations how it needs to be improved in terms of training and how they spot potential terrorists. But it is difficult, and it does take time. It takes resources, and it takes a serious acknowledgement of why radicalization happens. And like I say, social media is a hotbed of it. Misinformation, conspiracy theory, and spreading of something that taps into young people's and specifically young men's desire to be part of a group and to be accepted. And the far right are really good at this. Islamist terrorists are really good at this, and we need to take it seriously. But being flippant about how we approach this and smearing immigrants and trying to do this guilt by association doesn't help us tackle terrorism and what leads to these terrorist attacks. So hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.